Picture this: you're scrolling through vacation photos online, searching for the perfect Caribbean getaway. Beautiful beaches fill your screen. Crystal clear waters and all-inclusive resorts promising paradise. But behind those picture-perfect images lies a darker reality most tourists never see. The Dominican Republic welcomes over 6 million visitors each year to its pristine beaches and luxury resorts. Something sinister operates beneath this tropical paradise. A sophisticated coercive operation moves women across borders, hiding them in plain sight. This raises disturbing questions about other unsolved mysteries on these shores, just like the disappearance of Sudiksha Konanki, a student on vacation. University student Sudiksha Konanki vanished from a Punta Cana beach during spring break. Her case remains open. Could she have encountered similar dangers during her brief moment alone? By the way, I'm curious, where are you tuning in from? Drop a quick comment. I read them all, and sometimes your ideas spark our next case. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a travel safety specialist, warns that even visitors at luxury resorts can face unexpected situations during moments of separation from their group. Imagine these paradise beaches hiding secrets cold enough to freeze your blood. This is the story of Flor de Lis, a 23-year-old Dominican woman whose life changed forever at exactly 5:06 p.m. on an ordinary day in 2015. Her story reveals a systematic problem reaching into every corner of the Dominican Republic, from tourist hotspots to political offices. But what happened to Flor might explain more than just her own nightmare. Flor remembers every detail of that moment as if it were yesterday. She was supposed to spend the day swimming at Boca Chica, a beach town 30 minutes from Santo Domingo. Her friend invited her for what seemed like another normal day at the beach. Instead, that friend led her into 6 months of captivity. What Flor didn't know would destroy her life. Her friend worked as a recruiter for an underground exploitation network. When they arrived at the bar, a stranger approached Flor with words that shattered her world. "You were brought here so you could work for men and serve them drinks." The time was 5:06 p.m. Her childhood had officially ended. You might wonder how such operations function in a popular tourist destination. The answer is both simpler and more disturbing than you'd expect. These networks operate in plain sight, often in bars with hotels nearby, a setup found throughout the country. The establishment where Flor found herself wasn't run by some criminal. It belonged to a local politician. She wasn't alone there either. Several vulnerable individuals and adults were trapped in the same situation, pressured into serving clients under coercive conditions. But what happened next reveals the true scope of this network. Lawyers, officials, serious people you see around or in meetings, not knowing all the harm they caused, Flor recalls. These weren't stereotypical criminals lurking in dark alleys. They were respected members of society. Alba Rodriguez, director of Save the Children in the Dominican Republic, confirms what Flor experienced. Abuse of vulnerable individuals occurs in every corner of the Dominican Republic. The scope is staggering. Sosua, Boca Chica, behind grocery stores in Santo Domingo, in industrial zones, the problem is everywhere. The U.S. Embassy report lays it out bluntly: criminal abuse networks operate on streets, in parks, and on beaches. These illicit networks use organized listings to move victims through private residences, rented apartments, and extended stay hotels. But here's what makes this particularly troubling: society has normalized these crimes. There's a widespread belief that young people cause these situations and seek such relationships with adults, Rodriguez explains. This victim-blaming mentality prevents proper protection of vulnerable individuals. This normalization explains why exploitation is almost never reported, according to Major Julio Balbuena Valenzuela, Deputy Chief of the Dominican National Police's Human Trafficking Department. People thought they were rebelling, running away. What happened to Flor during those 6 months will shock you. For 6 months, Flor endured systematic coercion. She was subjected to ongoing mental pressure and control whenever she resisted. She remembers feeling completely powerless against their actions. She was reportedly controlled through intimidation and fear. The mental manipulation was equally devastating. Sometimes they would take her away from the venue, to the mountains to instill fear and assert control. But what saved Flor is something that rarely happens in these cases. Her father reported her disappearance. She was the only one among the 11 vulnerable individuals in that establishment whose parents contacted law enforcement. This detail highlights another disturbing aspect: how many victims simply disappear without anyone looking for them. The rescue came through an undercover operation. Flor managed to trick a client into letting her call her aunt. She could only say she was okay, but investigators traced the call. Some Spanish and Dominican clients came, but they didn't give me anything to drink, she recalls. They just asked questions, talked on phones, and signaled to each other. When one stood up and said, "Don't move. Flor de Lis, your father sent us to save you," she knew these gentlemen disguised as clients were actually police officers. The operation revealed the network scope. It also exposed something even more troubling: community support for those involved in exploitation. When authorities closed the establishment, many neighbors protested angrily. Local press reported that community members were outraged by what they considered unfair targeting of a respected politician. This brings us to why cases like Sudiksha's become so complex to investigate. Corruption and complicity among officials undermines efforts to combat organized exploitation. The U.S. Embassy report notes that corruption and complicity of officials in trafficking crimes continue to be a concern, hampering law enforcement efforts. The government hasn't reported the status of a 2017 case involving police officers and military personnel. Even more frustrating for victims like Flor is the lack of consequences. The friend who recruited her, the bar owner, and her exploiters remain free and continue doing the same thing. As Flor puts it, they are influential people. Here you can buy everything. The statistics tell a sobering story. In 2021, 29 victims of organized exploitation were officially registered: 6 adults, 21 young women, and 2 young men. Most were Dominican citizens, but victims also included 3 Haitians and 2 Colombians. The numbers are stark. 68 investigations. 89 people involved. Only 6 convictions in 2021. These numbers likely represent only a fraction of the actual problem. The hidden nature of these crimes, combined with social stigma and fear, means many cases never reach official records. Dominican legislation from 2003 requires demonstration of force, fraud, or coercion to qualify as organized exploitation when involving minors, contradicting international law. A comprehensive bill to update these laws has been stalled since 2019, withdrawn amid political controversy. Recovery for survivors is a long and difficult journey. Psychologist Luz del Alba Antonio Rojas, who worked with Flor, explains that victims must first accept and recognize that they were exploited. Many don't even realize it, she says. When victims emerge from exploitation, they are just a shell of a human being, Rojas explains. They have to work on their self-esteem for years, and they may never fully recover it. Flor's physical scars serve as permanent reminders. After giving birth to her daughter, now 5 years old, she couldn't breastfeed due to complications. Doctors told her she would never have more children. She says she doesn't resent this, she just wants a happy life and work to support her little girl. But the support system remains inadequate. There's only one shelter specifically for victims of organized exploitation in the entire country, with just 24 beds. The story takes a hopeful turn with prevention efforts. Flor and other survivors have organized a support network. They support each other and help organizations conduct awareness work in Dominican communities, preventing others from falling for recruiters who exploit vulnerability. International cooperation provides resources for this fight. The Spanish Development Cooperation Agency allocated €600,000 from 2018 to 2025, with additional contributions totaling €437,500 between 2020 and 2023. The tourism sector, representing 25% of the country's GDP, is being engaged in prevention efforts. David Libra, president of the Hotel and Tourism Association, emphasizes that member organizations are committed to fighting this problem. They strictly enforce rules preventing unauthorized registrations. However, digital platforms present new challenges. Digital platforms don't have such control to prevent guests from bringing victims to rooms, Libre notes. The U.S. Embassy report confirms that WhatsApp chats and social networks are used to target vulnerable individuals. Rodriguez mentions another tactic: we know they pay families to stay in hotels, and once they overcome registration obstacles, they switch rooms to stay with vulnerable individuals. The tourism industry faces a paradox: certain visitors are attracted by existing opportunities, Rodriguez explains. This tourism promotes the spread of criminal practices. It's a cycle that feeds on itself. As we reflect on Floor's story, several disturbing questions emerge. How many other young people have disappeared into these networks without anyone looking for them? How many respected community members participate while maintaining their public personas? Cases like Sudiksha Konanki's remind us that these dangers can affect anyone, even tourists from other countries who find themselves in vulnerable situations. When someone disappears in such circumstances, existing criminal networks could potentially be involved. The Dominican Republic's struggle with organized exploitation reveals how criminal networks adapt faster than legal systems. While legislation remains stuck in political processes, those involved in exploitation implement new technologies and strategies. They use vacation rental platforms to offer victims discreetly. They no longer need fixed locations, just mobile phones to connect with clients. Perhaps most troubling is how society's normalization creates an environment where these crimes flourish. When communities protest the closure of operations, when victims are blamed, when respected citizens participate without consequence, the system protecting these networks becomes stronger than the system trying to stop them. Flor de Lis survived and now speaks out, but her experience represents just one story among countless others. Her courage in sharing her ordeal shines light on a dark corner of paradise that too many prefer to ignore. The fight against organized exploitation requires more than law enforcement operations. It demands changes in social attitudes, legal frameworks, and economic structures that make people vulnerable to exploitation. For Flor, the journey continues. She wants to work, to provide for her daughter, to build a normal life from the lost years she can never reclaim. Her story serves as both a warning and a call to action. When we consider cases like Sudiksha Konanki's disappearance, these realities become even more relevant. The paradise that tourists see in brochures is real, but so is the hell that Flor and thousands like her have endured. Until we acknowledge both realities, the hidden networks will continue operating in plain sight. Understanding these systems helps us comprehend what might happen to missing persons like Sudiksha, and why finding answers can be so challenging when criminal networks operate with such sophistication and protection. If you or someone you know is experiencing a situation that feels unsafe, please reach out to local support services or helplines. Help is available.
If you enjoy deep dives into true crime, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Until next time, friends!